Hi everyone. Today's lesson is going to be about the history of psychology and the approaches by which we study and practice within the discipline. We'll take two ideas mainly and talk about them in this lesson. What is psychology? And then how did it become more of the contemporary science that we know it to be today? So let's start. What is psych? So psychology finds its roots, its pre-scientific roots, in the ancient Greeks. Socrates, Plato, Aristotle, all of these men who are known as philosophers also asked the questions that modern-day psychiatrists and psychologists and people practicing within the discipline ask. Why do we behave the way we do? And what does that mean for the people around us? So these guys were more philosophers than they were scientists, but still very curious about human behavior. As we approached the 18th century, you will notice that there are a couple of different people that are familiar to you. Descartes, Bacon, John Locke in particular had some roots in psychology. You probably recognize him from American government, U.S. history, maybe world history, the philosophers. His big contribution, or the big idea connected to psychology, is this idea of the tabula rasa, which is a blank slate. This is referring to the idea that our brains are a complete blank slate and that we fill them up with our experiences. So connected to that is this idea of empiricism. And you might want to stop or pause and jot down this definition. It is in your textbook, but please put it in your notebook if you feel like you won't remember it. Empiricism is the view that knowledge originates in experience, and that science therefore should rely only on observation and experimentation and nothing else. Psychology as a science is born in the late 1870s. Wilhelm Wundt gets the credit for that. He studied and he taught at the University of Leipzig in Germany. And mainly he looked at reaction time for a variety of different senses. I'd like you to go into your textbook and read those couple of paragraphs where they talk about Wilhelm Wundt. Edward Tichenor is another one of the people you want to be responsible for knowing, and we talk about psychology's roots. He looked at structuralism, which is essentially using introspection or thinking to oneself about the different sensory experiences that you have when you look at someone, something, taste something, hear something. Structuralism is an early school of psychology that they don't really use anymore unto itself. William James is considered the father of modern psychology. He is credited with writing the first psych textbook, which just has a lot of similar information to yours. And he's credited with a lot of different experiments throughout his time. Mary Calkins and Margaret Floy Washburn, these women were some of the first women to get master's degrees and PhDs in psychology, to work with the American Psychological Association. They are prominent women that you should know and understand as you move forward, as we talk about key figures in psychology. We'll also be focusing, they will be a couple of the people we'll look at when we do our Women Crush Wednesday projects. These people all looked into experimental psychology. This is the study of behavior and thinking using the experimental method. This is like the scientific method that you used in all these sciences all these years. Now here's Freud. Sigmund Freud, as you know, is a very prominent figure in psychology. He looked at psychoanalysis and used that to help his patients, who were mostly women at turn of the 20th century, Victorian Europe. And his contributions to psych are numerous. And we'll look at him throughout the course in different units to help understand and fully grasp all of his different pieces that he contributed to. So for example, we look at him when we study dreams, we look at him when we study therapy, We look at him when we study child development. He has made a great many contributions, for better or for worse, whatever you think of Freud. He has made lots of contributions to a lot of particularly 20th century thinking. Behaviorism is another approach that we use when we talk about an approach to studying psych or to practicing psych. John B. Watson and B.F. Skinner, these were the fathers of behaviorism. They did a number of experiments, and essentially they look at only observable behavior without any understanding of what's going on in your brain. They have no reference to mental processes. So early on, behaviorism was really twofold. Number one, it should be an objective science that, number two, studies behavior without any reference to mental processes. So that would mean like they wouldn't even discuss if you were thinking, judging, evaluating, any of those processes in why we behave the way we do. Simply trying to control your behavior without any set idea of what's going on in your brain, which to you and me probably doesn't make all that much sense because we figure lots of people behave based on their thoughts, so why wouldn't they take that into account? But they didn't. Today, most research psychologists agree with number one in the definition, but not with number two. Humanistic psychology is another classic approach which really focuses on the potential for human growth. So people like Carl Rogers and Abraham Maslow, they studied people who were successful, people who made a contribution to society. For example, Eleanor Roosevelt. They looked at her and said, what qualities does this type of person have, and how can I use those qualities to help people who are struggling in life? So they really take it from a more positive idea. There's some debate as to whether humanistic psychology is actually an approach anymore, but it's definitely worth studying. So we definitely look at that. Cognitive neuroscience is another one that we look at and we study tremendously. We'll get more into neuroscience and brain and behavior in the coming weeks. This is the study of how the brain activity, so your brain functions, including perception, thinking, memory, and language, are connected to how your brain actually functions within your body. So brain chemistry, for example, neurotransmitters, hormones, those kinds of things, and how they are linked to things like perception, thinking, and memory. Okay, so in our next lesson, we'll look at contemporary psychology, how psych is today, and then what that means for our study as we move forward through the course of the year. I hope you take some time to go back and review anything that you don't understand. Be sure to take the 5-question quiz that's posted under Aspen. That is a grade to make sure that you fully grasp what's going on. You can watch this video as many times as you need to in order to get the information. That's the key point. And then we'll do some activities in class, next class, to help you even grasp it even more. So you have the information. Thank you for listening, and I will see you in class. Take care.